Well, I'll tell you. Anytime you're in a job of service, it's a good thing, and you got to have the big picture in mind and all of that. We're hearing fairly regularly through this pandemic from our county commissioners, and I think that's excellent. I'm all about more communication than less, right?
Yeah.
Transparency, conversation, um, people being in the know. And County Commissioner LaDon Linde is on the phone this morning to kind of give us an update on the new mask things, the CDC, the health board, et cetera, et cetera. So, Mr. Commissioner, good morning.
Good
Thanks for being
morning.
here.
Well, good morning, Dave and Lance. It is great to be on with you this morning. What a difference 24 hours make.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a programming idea. Perhaps if you're interested, maybe Dave Ramsey could have a mask-free screen section added to his show. I think a lot of people would join.
That would be appropriate. It's a crazy thing that we've been dealing with, and I don't know that there's. I mean, we've had pandemics before, and we've had health crises before, but we've never had the access to information flying around and changing,
Yeah.
and all of the stuff that we seem to be. I mean, when the Spanish flu hit, we weren't on Facebook speculating,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We
That's
we
right,
we were
yeah.
told what we were told, and
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Kind of miss those days, you know?
yeah, exactly. All right, so where do you want to start? Should we go back? Can we go back to the health board meeting? We heard from Commissioner McKinney on that. You and Commissioner Anderson initially voted no on the mask drop, but then you came back I guess reframed it so that you're urging the health guy, the health director, to do it. What was that about? I mean, I guess on the one hand, some of us would say, "Hey, commissioners, here's your chance to dump the masks. So why don't we vote united and
Right
take
on.
care of it ourselves?"
Right.
You bet. You bet. And fair questions all around. I will tell you that, like so many people out there, I've been frustrated at the government for their heavy-handed and sometimes arbitrary approach to this pandemic. And in fact, to be honest, that's why I decided to get involved in the first place, because what I saw going on.
Mm-hmm.
The side effects that were happening that weren't being considered. And we've had this conversation before.
Sure.
The damage done to businesses, to jobs lost, the problem with inadequate education for our school kids, limitations on our freedom of worship and assembly, and people delaying treatment for serious diseases because they're panicked about COVID. We got to that point. And of course we can go through the anxiety, depression, drug overdose, domestic violence, and the list, can go on. But, we had more. I would say I had more comments about the mask issue, and taking the masks off in advance of the Wednesday's health board meeting than I have had about any other issue. And I think it's become a symbol in a way, frankly, of the arbitrary nature of government and its heavy-handed approach to this situation. And so the concern that I had going into the meeting, and I wasn't completely convinced which way I was going to go. I was certainly in favor of ending the mask mandate, but I was concerned that people would think that if we had a vote that night, that all of a sudden the mask mandate was over. And of course, it didn't change if we did make that vote or could make that vote, it wouldn't change the fact that the governor still had his mandates in place and the CDC still had their recommendations in place. Thankfully, the CDC's are guidelines rather than law, which is why we have some states in the union that had already gotten rid of the masks.
Right.
And we, I would like to be more like them. But the concern we had, and there are two sides to look at. And one was, and Commissioner McKinney expressed this very well, I thought, yesterday. There's part of state law that says, the health officer and the executive director are there to carry out, the policy of the board. And that is correct. But there's also part in the RCWs that say that the health officer has the right to put out, rules in the interest of the public health. And so looking at that, it's a difficult thing. I believe it should be in the hands of elected officials, but it's not truly in the hands of elected officials. And so that's why, the other concern that I had was the possible confusion, because people were thinking, oh, we can have one vote and we're done with it, and the fact is we wouldn't be done with it, unfortunately. So that's why I said, well, I'm not going to vote in favor of saying we're going to rescind what the health officer did, because I didn't believe we had that authority to do it, which is why I followed up with a motion to say, okay, we don't have the authority, but I do think we have the authority to recommend and pressure the health officer to change his mind.
All right. Well, now I'm confused. So allow me to backtrack just a little bit.
You bet.
It is your understanding that the health officer has autonomy from the directives from the board? He can.
When my understanding of the reading of the RCW is that when there is, an interest in the, if there's a decision that he feels is in the best interest of the health and safety of citizens, that he has that authority. I'm not arguing in defense of that authority. I'm just saying that the case was made to me that he has that authority. And
is that what, legal counsel making that case, or just your own readings of the RCW?
Well, that wasn't my reading of the RCW. It was a reading that took place during the health board meeting.
Okay, so
yeah,
in essence, then by not voting, you felt that you wouldn't send a confusing message. But now we've got a divided commission, so that's kind of confusing and sends a confusing message. It seems like CDC and the governor bailed all you guys out by making this decision and sort of taking it off the table. But so the decision to vote to urge Dr. Is it pronounced Jeka? How does he pronounce his name?
I think it's Yeka.
Yeah. So the decision to urge him to do it is powerless, other than because if it's his authority, then and what does that accomplish? Well,
I guess I think it's something that's still open to debate, and we have to still figure that out, because those two are contradictory in terms, and we've got to come to a sensible conclusion to that. But I do want to emphasize this as well. The CDC, when they came out with their guidelines to say, this is time to loosen this up, and I will tell you that right away I actually contacted the governor's office and said, hey, the CDC has given us the authority to move ahead. When are you going to follow suit?
Good.
And I did the same thing with the health district. I said, okay, the CDC has given us authority to move ahead. Well, will you follow suit? And I will say that I got an answer back right away. Sometimes, an earlier argument we had to do with the 6 foot versus the 3 foot distancing in the schools.
Right.
Where there'd been research saying, we can do this, we can shorten it, we can get our kids back to school. And so, we and I personally had contacted the governor's office and say, hey, this is going in other states. Why aren't we looking at this? And the first time that we sent this out, we got a response saying, well, no, we're not going to do that. The second time we, went through that conversation, they said, we're going to allow that, under certain circumstances. So, so we've had this conversation before, but that first time with the school distancing, it took a few days to a week for that change to take place. So I was happy that the State Department of Health and the governor's office actually came out right away and said, we'll do what the CDC recommended.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost right on the heels of their determination, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
So clarify for folks, you one of your concerns was confusion. What is the status of things now as you understand it? What can and can't we do? I want to go to a basketball game this Saturday. Will the players be wearing masks? Will I get in the door? Do I have to show my card? That whole how do we prove ourselves is part of the issue.
So great question. For my perspective, going into a basketball game or something, an event like that we are not. We don't have to wear the mask. Now I know that they're saying if you are fully vaccinated, but I don't think we should be asking the question whether somebody's, vaccinated or not. I think we need to take that on faith and leave it as is. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I haven't read all the details yet, but I don't think there's anything indicating in there that I've seen so far that says, we're going to have to require, a vaccine card at the door.
Yeah.
And I certainly hope it's not that way, but I don't think there's anything that I've read so far that indicates that's the case.
You know, part of LaDon, part of what adds to all of this is the rare but publicized when it occurs, cases of those people who have been vaccinated and still turn up with COVID. We see this morning that big mouth comic Bill Maher got vaccinated, and now he has COVID. And it is, 85 to 95 or whatever the numbers are, effective.
Right.
And then there's that small window of folks who will get their vaccinations, and it's still not going to be 100%. And I think that's extreme to think that it ever would be. But when one of those rarities pops up, bam, it gets headlines, and then everybody freaks out about, well, does the vaccine work or doesn't it? And of course, it works for most, overwhelmingly most.
Sure. And the fact is that no vaccine is 100% effective. But even if it doesn't stop the disease, it reduces the severity of the symptoms. These are what they refer to as breakthrough cases. And frankly, I think there's been a little bit too much attention paid to them.
Agreed.
The Washington State, for example, in Washington State, there have been about 5 breakthrough cases that have ended up in people dying. But the thing that people are neglecting to mention sometimes is the fact that everybody in that case, in that group, were between the ages of 67 and 94, and they all had multiple other health issues that they were dealing with. So I don't think it's fair to say that, the COVID vaccine wasn't effective in those cases. Typically, these breakthrough cases, the symptoms are extremely mild. And the fact is that if somebody's had COVID before and they get it again, and that does happen in a small minority of cases, again, their symptoms are minor. And so, we had a conversation at the health district meeting probably a month ago, and one of the health district staff said, well, we don't just allow, when we're talking about some loosening of restrictions, the response to us was, well, we don't allow people to drive around at 150 miles an hour. And my response was, yeah, that's true, but we also don't ask that they drive around at 5 miles an hour. Yeah. We have to manage and balance risk. And the fact is we can't get rid of COVID any more than we can get rid of cancer or heart disease or, diabetes or car accidents or any of these other things that we're subject to every day. But we just have to educate people and give them tools to help protect themselves the best we can and allow them to use their judgment. That's the best we can do.
Good point, sir. One last question. Any surprise that with the loosening of mask restrictions, the governor decided that he would just hold on to that emergency power for a little while longer?
Well, I think he likes his power, unfortunately. And as you know, we put out 3, as commissioners, we have put out 3 declarations or letters asking for him to end the emergency declarations. We have all contacted the governor's office, the legislature, asking them to pull back on these reins, to loosen his hold on power. I think it is good that there is actually a reopening date now. Yep. Earlier this week, we were one of only 2 states that didn't have a reopening date. But I think there's still some devil in the details. I mean, you asked the question about the basketball game and the masks, and I don't think we've actually resolved the issue about kids wearing masks at school and sporting events. I saw this morning that the schools in Washington State are mandated to go back to school in the fall, everybody, but the mask will still be required. And so, there's still some work to do here.
It seems like the talk now is kind of switching to, how do you prove that you had the vaccine? And you say there's really been no talk about that among the board members, right?
No, and my feeling, there shouldn't be. We shouldn't have that point. I do think the idea of saying, let's open on June 30th, and, if you're vaccinated, if we get a certain percentage vaccinated, that we can open sooner. I think that's a better incentive than saying, okay, well, you can increase your capacity at a ball game or church if you are vaccinated, and we'll have you sit in this vaccinated-only section. I thought this was a terrible idea, and I, in my church, I couldn't see enforcing that or even suggesting the idea that we follow that.